So, as you all know, the EHRC that's a shame, it's blocked me. Okay. As you all know, the EHRC in the UK is doing a consultation. And the consultation is basically, should we ban trans people from public or not? And I am going to go through that on the stream. I think we're going to get Dr. Ruth Pierce on again, and we're going to go through. So if you are stressed by this, you can come and do like a team writing session where we'll all go through it all together. And I'll also release an edited video afterwards with like a shortened version that hopefully will be shareable, that you can give to your friends and family of, guidance on how to fill it in a way that will be useful. So if you're worrying about it, don't worry. We have 6 weeks or 5.5 weeks or whatever. We will do it, and we'll all do it together. That's my position anyway. Unfortunately, I can't see this because the author's hidden it, but that's totally fine. It's just a starting point. Some people on Blue Sky have been discussing boycotting the consultation. And I guess I want to talk about this topic in general. In fact, we can lose this picture because it's not much use. I think this is a real discussion that's worth having. And if you are someone who thinks we should boycott the consultation, I'm not coming for you, and I'm not saying you're an idiot, and I'm not saying I know better at all. And if you're someone who agrees that we should fill in the consultation, don't go for people who disagree. And if you're someone who disagrees, try and have some, also do the same. What I think in a time like this is no one knows what the best set of actions is to get trans people's rights. If we were to run a simulation of the universe 1 billion times and make a different decision at every decision point, some of them would get to the point of trans people having human rights faster than others. So there's an optimal route through this. And no one knows what that is without doing it and looking back and seeing. We cannot know what the best thing to do is. But we can have an idea, and we can look at what's happened in other situations and discuss it with each other. And people are going to come to different conclusions on that. So I really think that when you're having a disagreement with someone over something like this, if you're someone who has the same position as me, thinks we should fill in this consultation, and I will explain why in a second, and you're talking to someone who doesn't think that, or it's the other way around, please try and just first analyze, is this person on the same side as me? Is this person's strong opinion coming from the position of they want trans people to have rights, and they're terrified, and they don't know what's best, but they think X is best rather than Y? Because if that's the case, then you need to both give each other space to just be this is what I think. You haven't convinced me, so I'm going to carry on thinking the same thing, and I think you're wrong. However, neither of us know. We are just doing our best. And the reality is that some trans people are going to boycott this consultation because they think that's best. And I could be oh, that's so annoying because I think we need to all fill it in. Okay. But some people don't think that. And I'm not going to be able to convince them. I might be able to convince some of them. And, I hope I can do in the rest of this section. But the bottom line is they aren't my enemies. They're not, I could say, oh, if only we had more people, it might have made more difference. I don't know how many more people we need to fill it in order to make a difference. Maybe it'll make no difference at all anyway. But the enemies, the people fighting against us, are the people doing this fucking consultation, trying to take away our freedom, remove our human rights. And I get that it's frustrating to talk with someone who just doesn't seem to be listening. I saw some discussions about this today in this thread from multiple people where they didn't seem like they were listening to each other, or one of them at least didn't seem like they were listening in the conversation or whatever. And that is frustrating, and it can cause people to get snappy because we're all so stressed at the moment. But just really try and have a thing in your mind that just constantly reminds you over and over again, is this person my enemy? Is this person actively causing harm on a scale that is worth talking about? If it turns out that we simulated the universe 1 trillion times and filling in the consultation was better, then technically the people who didn't fill it in were slowing down the progress to trans rights or whatever. And equally, if we run the universe simulation, it turns out that boycotting it was better. The people who didn't boycott would be some form of slowdown on that whatever. But they wouldn't be net negative. They're not people who are actively causing harm. They're not people who are your enemies. So just try and remember that. And I'm not referring to anyone in particular when I'm saying this. I saw quite a lot of conversations this and people disagreeing, and I think this is something that we need to discuss. So the pros for boycotting this are the EHRC is like brazenly corrupt. The people leading it absolutely hate trans people. They were like gleefully trying to say that all trans people could be banned from all public spaces. They're still saying that on the radio and stuff. They were put in those positions of power purely because they're gender critical ideologues who have absolutely no grip on reality at all. They do not care. They have like unchecked power. They hate trans people. Like they just want to ban us from things. So obviously this consultation they've created is not in good faith at all. It's like they've been forced to do this consultation. They released some guidance like straight away. They released it at 10 p.m. on a Friday without announcing it, to the shock of everyone, because they hoped they could just sneak it under the radar. And then when it became a news item, they're like, okay, well, we'll have a quick consultation then, 2 weeks, just get it done, because they just wanted to tick the box. And then there was a load of noise about that, so they've conceded, okay, the consultation's going to be 6 weeks. But they've still written a completely bullshit consultation, which we need to complain about. Yes. But you could just say, well, okay, well, they're just trying to rubber stamp this. And if you participate in it, one, you're wasting your energy because they're not going to listen to you anyway. And two, maybe they can then say, oh, look, trans people were involved. They were whining about not being involved. Now they've been involved. We're banning them from public and they can't complain. And I hear all of those points. I totally accept that, like, this is not the first one of these fucking consultations we've had to fill in. I've been saying to you all, write to your MP, contact your MP, talk to your boss, talk to all this kind of stuff for weeks now. And it's exhausting. Like, it fills you with dread. You're having to, like, you know, get yourself into the zone to write a letter, which is already tedious enough, even if you're just like, you know, doing a phone call is terrible, even if you're ringing your best friend or something. Just phone calls are grim. But when it's talking about this group that wants to take away your human rights, it's so draining. It saps from your energy and your mental health and stuff. And then I'm saying, oh, there's another one. Oh, there's another one. There's gonna be another one after this. So I can totally understand the argument that it's a big drain for like low positive. It's not like someone is going to write one letter that is so good that it flips the course of history and, you know, they've saved the day or anything. That just isn't going to happen. And I totally understand this kind of, they can say, oh, some trans people were involved and we just ignored them all and blah, 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 whatever. They do want this to be a rubber stamping exercise. They do want to push out guidance saying we should be completely banned from public life. That is their goal. But from the Supreme Court ruling thing, as we've seen in over the last couple of weeks, there's been a huge pushback, not just from trans people, but from cis people, to the point where I've heard from quite a lot of different sources from the government that quite a lot of people in the government were shocked at the amount of pushback on this. They were shocked that the EHRC tried to rush out this consultation. They were shocked that it was only going to be for 2 weeks and it just like wasn't standard procedure. And they, like everyone I'm talking to is saying that their MP is saying, wow, we're getting so many letters about this in support of trans rights and stuff. And I didn't realise anything about this, didn't know it was an issue. When I went to Parliament and I brought some of this stuff up, the MPs were saying themselves, like, they had been, like, inundated with this stuff. And it's causing the EHRC to be under a lot of pressure. They've had to do a consultation, and now the consultation has had to be extended. We are building pressure, and it is doing stuff. And I'm not saying it's, like, going to solve trans rights overnight, or even I can't guarantee that it will stop them taking our rights away. But we've got to do something. We have to fight back, because there's a real chance that we can reverse some of this, or at least stop the worst of it, or maybe stop all of it. And we've got to do something. And that doesn't necessarily mean filling in this consultation, but I don't think we can say the whole system's rigged, so we're not going to do anything. We need protests, like the protests we looked about earlier with where a bunch of trans women turned up and did a topless protest. We've had a bunch of protests. There's been so many different trans rights protests over the last few weeks, and every now and then one of them breaks through and it makes a difference and people notice it, and then it becomes a worthwhile use of their time. But some of these other protests weren't covered by any media, no one's talking about them, and you could be like, oh, it was a waste of time, why did I even go to this protest? It's because we don't know which ones are the things that are going to be important. But we do know that this consultation is going to be quite important. I think out of all of the things, this is like currently the number one most important priority. I think maybe meeting your MP in person is probably a better use of your time. But this filling in this consultation is going to take like at most an hour. Hopefully much shorter than that. And if we do it together, or you follow a guide or something, then hopefully it's not so much of a burden. They have to review all of these responses. They have to write a report about all of these responses. And sure, they're going to try and throw them out. They're going to try and ignore them. They're going to try all these things. But all of this stuff becomes public record. And we need it to be there for when we end up, all of this stuff is going to end up in the European Court of Human Rights. All of this stuff is going to be litigated loads. All of this stuff is going to go to Parliament so many times over the next decade. And we need things like with the Gender Recognition Act reform. They had 3 consultations on that, and all 3 of them, all of the majority of all of the different stakeholders, as they call them, the groups involved, the majority of them supported reforming the Gender Recognition Act, and that included feminists, that included shelters, women's shelters, that included gay rights groups, that included trans groups, obviously. And so when they've got this narrative of, oh, I wasn't supported by feminists, well, that's untrue, because you did 3 separate consultations, and they every time the feminists said they supported it. So even though they ended up rejecting the law because we had, a right-wing government full of idiots, that hasn't gone away. One day we will reform the Gender Recognition Act in some form, and we will keep pushing it until we have equality. And all of this stuff being on record is useful for creating momentum and pushback in Parliament. There will be a lot of politicians who see this, and if this gets 10,000 responses from gender criticals and 5,000 responses from trans people, there will be some politicians who'll be like, the trans people are opposing this or whatever, but it's harder for them to say. Whereas if we get 100,000 responses, suddenly it's like, wow, okay, this is actually a big issue, and more politicians will feel like they need to say something about it, positive and negative. But as we have seen recently, they just had a debate on, I think, Gender Recognition Act reform again in Parliament. And usually when we see these debates lined up, it's like, okay, the 10 gender critical MP wackos are going to use it to say their conspiracies in Parliament. There'll be pushback from one good MP, and that'll be it. This time, there was tens of MPs. The majority of them were saying trans positive stuff, and they had improved their language. The arguments they're making have got better. And that's because we're putting so much pressure on, and they're seeing all this stuff, and they're reading reports. People in Parliament, it's not one big monolith where they will make these coordinated decisions together. They see this stuff. It'll come to their department, and they'll be the department of whatever, and this consultation will touch them in some weird way, and they'll have to read the responses, and they'll be like, wow, okay, I didn't know anything about this. Wow, this is a bigger deal than I thought. So I personally am currently of the position that I think filling in this consultation is something we should all do, and I think boycotting it will just give them more leeway to say, well, not many people opposed it, so this is just good. They want to say that, they want to lie and just say, oh, it's not a big deal, because they're constantly saying, oh yeah, we want to ban all trans people from public. Well, also this doesn't really affect trans people. If we can say, no, you had a consultation, thousands of people wrote in, and they, the majority of them disagreed with you, the people actually affected by this are saying no, then that is pressure we can apply, even if the EHRC ignore it. When they write guidance, it then goes to Parliament, and Parliament has to decide on it. And when there's political pressure from it, they're going to have to do something. Even if Keir Starmer is transphobic, there are other politicians who disagree with him. We need to give them ammo. So I am going to do a stream on it. I think I'm going to have Dr. Ruth Pearce again. We did one with together before. I think it was quite good. If you aren't convinced by what I'm saying here, I think you're wrong. But we aren't enemies. And I hope you don't think I'm your enemy. And what I will say is, what you have to do, if you're going to boycott this consultation, is you have to do something. Because we're really in a moment where we have to be doing something. And I want you all to just... It's terrifying, but you need to find something you're good at. And maybe that is talking about it on YouTube like I do. Maybe that is going to a protest and getting your boobs out like Sugar from earlier did. Maybe it's... by the way, that was a joke. I wasn't trying to be derogatory about that. I think that protest was incredibly impactful. But also maybe it's drawing cartoons and you want to express this in the form of a cartoon about how unjust it is. Maybe you're the kind of person who's really good at organising things behind the scenes and you can just introduce a bunch of people to each other. Maybe you're really good at writing letters and you should help other people fill this consultation in. But you do just have to do something. Whatever it is. You don't have to be brave. You just have to do something. And I think filling in this consultation and writing a letter to your MP are maybe a little intimidating, but they are things you can do, you have the power to do, and I think are worth doing and apply pressure. We have got more momentum now than we did a few weeks ago. Things are building up. MPs are being shocked by how much momentum we are gaining, and we need to keep it rolling and keep applying the pressure and make it so they feel like if they're going to take our rights away, they know there is huge pressure against it and it is unpopular.